Hi, and welcome to the Property Podcast. I'm Rob B, with Rob D, and I've got a question for you. Would you like to save hundreds or thousands of pounds and get a free checklist so you can do that? Well, you're at the right place. This week on the Property Podcast, we're going to teach you how to do a portfolio review.
Yes, welcome to the Property Podcast, where every Thursday morning, property investors, just like you, come together to be informed and inspired. Now, we emphasise taking action a lot on this podcast, and for good reason. Taking action is the most important thing you can do as an investor. But nearly as important is taking the time to pause and review how that action has gone. Conducting an annual portfolio review could be one of the most important things you do all year. So we're going to take you through that process, and make sure you stick around to the end for Hub Extra, where we've got a resource to make it even easier for you.
It's time for our news story of the week now, and it comes from the BBC, and the headline says, tough economic conditions may be ending in Aberdeen. Now, this article is really interesting because it really focuses on the property market in Aberdeen, which is, by some way, the most volatile property market in the UK. There's a good reason for that, Rob.
Yeah, a very large part of Aberdeen's economy is based on oil. So when the oil price is high, things are booming, there's more investment in the sector, more people therefore want to live there, and property prices go up. But when things go the other way, as they did a couple of years ago, things go the other way. And over the last couple of years, Aberdeen has been bottom of the table for capital growth for the whole UK. In fact, prices have been going down pretty much consistently. This news story is saying that prices have now stabilised and transaction volumes are up, which is normally a good sign that prices will follow. Does that mean that it's time to go and invest in Aberdeen? Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I'd say if you don't have a very informed and confident view on what oil price is likely to do in future, probably one to avoid, because it's the only market I can think of that has such a massive reliance on just one factor.
So when your property market is highly influenced by a volatile asset, well, you get volatile prices. But what it does do is it makes for a really interesting property market. Most property markets are steady and there's slow shifts in the pricing. You know, it takes a while for property prices to move up or down. But Aberdeen is very different. And that's why we've previously had Aberdeen as our main location focus for the Property Hub magazine. Now, if you're keen to go and read that, you can subscribe and get all the digital back copies. So if you go to propertyhub.net/magazine, you can get yourself subscribed. You should be doing that already. And of course, if you're switched on and you already are subscribed and you missed that article, you can go back and have a read by accessing the digital back copies.
So we're coming up to the end of the year. I know, where did it go? And for a lot of people, that's going to mean some well-earned time off. That doesn't mean, though, that you can be switching off, because this is the perfect time of year to be conducting a review of your property portfolio. It's the time of year when a lot of people will start thinking about what they want to achieve in the coming year. But to do that well, you need to have a realistic picture of where you are right now. And you might think you know, but taking the time just once a year to ask yourself a set list of questions and make sure that you know for real exactly where you are and what you need to be focusing on is such a valuable exercise. So to help you do that, we're going to run you through our process in this episode.
I'll keep listening to the end because we're going to tell you how you can get your hands on a free checklist with all these items listed. So don't worry, you don't need to scribble it down. The only note you'll need to take is the link for the free download later. So first on our list is rent. So you will hopefully be getting rent. If you're not, then the review is definitely worthwhile doing. But hopefully you're getting rent from your properties. The first thing you want to do is have a look at when was the last time you increased them. So if it's been a few years, you might be happy because you've got a great tenant there, or you may have just forgotten. So you may want to address that if you're self-managing by having a conversation with your tenants, or if you're having a property managed for you by your letting agent. Now to do this, just jump on Rightmove and have a look. Even if you increased your rents last year, doesn't mean you should leave it. Check, the market may have moved. Go on Rightmove, type in the postcode, look for similar properties in the immediate area and get a feel for what properties should be letting for. Now if you're self-managed, little cheeky trick, little bit naughty, but you can do it. Look for local letting agents in those areas. Call up and say, hey, I've got this type of property. If I put it on your books, what do you think I'd be able to get for it? And do that with a few agents. Now, of course, they may give you an optimistic viewpoint on the rental level, but again, it just helps you build up that picture. And last thing to say on this, I've touched on it already, but just because you can increase rents doesn't mean you should. The last thing you should review when looking at your rents, how happy you are with your current tenants. If they're great tenants, then you want to keep them. So regular price increases may prompt them to look elsewhere. A good tenant is worth their weight in gold. So don't automatically look to increase rents at every opportunity. Assess the bigger picture and see if it's worthwhile. The next thing you want to do is look at the value of your property. Has it increased or decreased in value? Over a year, a lot can happen. If you, for example, have property in Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Nottingham right now, then chances are the prices have increased in your area. And therefore, the amount of equity that you have in that property is increased too, which is good if you're looking at mortgages.
Which leads us nicely on to reviewing what mortgages you've got on your existing portfolio. So take a look. You might have to dig through all the paperwork they sent you in the first place if you don't have this to hand, but work out what your outstanding mortgage balances are so you can calculate how much equity you've got. Also, note down what rate your mortgages are on and how long you've got till the end of the fixed term. It might be that over the last year, you've come to the end of a fixed term without you noticing, and you've gone on to a reversionary rate, which isn't so good. Or it could be that that's coming up in the next few months, and so you want to start talking to your mortgage broker and seeing what's out there. There are some unbelievable mortgage deals out there at the moment, so this could be a very profitable use of 10 minutes or so. Another area where you can potentially save money is insurance. Take a look at the insurance you've got across your portfolio, make sure you're happy with it, and potentially, if you've got insurance across a few different providers, consider moving them all to the same supplier because you might be able to negotiate a bit of a discount. And if it turns out in that process that you don't have insurance or you don't have a level of insurance that you're happy with, make sure you get that sorted. It's not the kind of thing that you would want to or need to look at more regularly than once a year, but just having that annual check-in is a way of making sure it's still competitive and that you haven't stumbled into any problems.
Next up is looking at the properties that you have and look at how they're behaving. Do your properties just tick over with minimal fuss? Hopefully that's the case. Or do you have some properties in your portfolio that are problem properties? And your property can become a problem property. Try and say that early on a Monday morning. For a few reasons. First of all, have you got bad tenants? And I don't mean just a one-off, but are you consistently seeming to get bad tenants? Now, it could be your referencing, it could be your letting agent, or it could be that that's just the type of tenants that your property is attracting. Are you having to constantly repair your property? Is it past its sell-by date? Is it just one of those properties that constantly needs work and attention? Or is it hard to let? Every time you put it onto the market, does it take multiple weeks, moving into months to get it let? Now, happening once, maybe just bad luck, but happening every time it comes to market? Well, then you might have yourself a problem property. Which leads you to this question. For every property in your portfolio, but particularly properties that are causing you some issues, is would you buy it again? Now, the type of answer you want here is yeah, like hell yeah, I want to buy this one again. This was a great deal, and hopefully you do feel like that about your properties. But there may be some that you're like, and then there are occasionally, no, I'd absolutely not. I would not buy that property again. You may want to consider moving it on. Don't just hold it for holding's sake. We do say never sell a property as general advice. However, if it's constantly causing you issues and problems, maybe it's time to put it back to the market, get the money out and put it into something else that will cause you less issues.
So that's a really useful overview of the nuts and bolts of your portfolio, what the numbers look like and how it's getting on. Now you know that, you've got that base of knowledge, you can start thinking about the actions that you need to take. So this isn't goals, this isn't what you want to achieve next year, that's a separate exercise. But this is more thinking about what needs to be done as a result of what you've just discovered. So the first thing to think about is who you've got on your team. If you've got problems or you've got things that aren't quite as you'd like them to be, is that because you don't have the right people on your team? So that includes your mortgage broker. Are they proactively telling you when you're coming to the end of fixed terms and better deals are available? Are they getting you the best possible deals, or do they just seem to be placing you with the same lender every time? It might be worth switching if you're not happy. Also, your accountant. Have you heard from your accountant this year? Have they been responsive when you've asked for advice? Have they proactively highlighted things you should be thinking about? Or have you just sent them a load of stuff once a year and that's about it? If you're not getting what you need and you have ambitions to do more with your portfolio, again, maybe it's time to switch. We've got Property Hub Tax, which you can find at thepropertyhub.net/tax, but whichever accountant you use, make sure they're doing what they need to do for you. You also might want to look at your insurance broker. You might want to look at your letting agent. If you do have those problem properties, then ask yourself, is it the property that's the problem, or should the agent be doing better than they currently are? And finally, any builders that you've got relationships with, are you happy with the work that you've had done this year? Or do you need to be broadening out your network a little bit when it comes to tradespeople as well?
You need to assess what work needs to be done. Things do need eventually replacing. So do any of your properties need any major wear projects undertaking? They may be quite obvious to you what needs to be done. You may need to dig a little bit deeper and have a look at the state of the condition of your properties to assess potential problems as well. And remember, if you haven't had anything go wrong for a long time, yes, you have been lucky, but eventually something will happen. For example, if your boiler hasn't needed looking at for 10 years, well, it's probably going to go pop very soon. Also, if the roof's not been touched in a few decades, well then, chances are that's going to happen soon as well. So make sure there's a budget for that and there's a pot for that, particularly if the properties in your portfolio are a little bit older. Now, tax is always important because if you don't get it right, you're going to end up paying too much. But more recently, with all the changes the government's put in place, reviewing your tax situation is so much more important now when you're doing a property portfolio review. Your tax strategy may tell you that it's time to sell some of those properties, that you need to stagger some of the sales possibly and do one a year, depending on your tax situation. Will your repairs be seen as repairs or improvements? Again, that will change how you're taxed and potentially cost or save you money. So there's lots to consider now when reviewing your portfolio. You will want to speak to an accountant to be able to do that effectively and make sure you're operating with best advice. There are accountants out there that can do it, but of course the most wonderful property accountants are found at Property Hub Tax. I'm not going to go into a big pitch here, but if you are interested, go to thepropertyhub.net/tax and you can find out more information there.
And finally, this is a great time of year to make sure that you've got all the resources that you need to keep yourself up to date, because things change all the time. Going over this stuff once a year is great, but you need to keep up your education throughout the year. So if your style of investment means that knowing where major regeneration projects are happening will help you locate where you're going to be looking for your next investment, then there are lots of sites to help you with that kind of thing. You can Google it for the areas that you're interested in, but some examples are Place Northwest for the Northwest, Invest in Nottingham. There's loads of them, but find the ones that are relevant for you, sign up for their emails, then all the news just comes to you. Also, to keep you in touch with property more generally and what other hubbers are doing, then make sure you're subscribed to the Property Hub magazine. If you're not already, go to thepropertyhub.net/magazine. And for constant updates and inspiration, make sure you're following our social channels. We're on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter as Property Hub UK. And of course, you're already doing the most important thing, so pat yourself on the back. But make sure you keep on listening to the Property Podcast every week.
Because we'll give you episodes like this, which hopefully will save you hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. That's how important doing a property portfolio review is, because things change. You may be on the wrong mortgage product, costing you money. You may be paying too much for insurance, costing you money. You may be set up the wrong way for your tax affairs, costing you money. But if you take action because you've done a portfolio review, you save money. That's why spending half a day once a year doing this is time well spent. And if nothing else, it'll give you peace of mind to know that you're doing the right things. So set a recurring event in your calendar for half a day, once a year, because it's time well spent. And coming up in Hub Extra, we've got the checklist with all these items listed to make that a little bit easier for you. So it's time for some lovely reviews from wonderful human beings and hubbers who've navigated iTunes to write these lovely words. So first up's Matt Potts, who says, a first-class resource telling the truth about property in a non-sales pitch fashion. Anyone starting out or experienced investors should tune in every week. I listen as soon as it's recorded every week, which is something I can't say about other podcasts. Keep up the good work. And Neil Thompson says, now I've given up my corporate job and moved into property full-time. It's thanks to Rob and Rob, and along with Pete Matthew, for all the knowledge, advice and wisdom they provided. But more than that, they've given me the confidence to break out on my own and seek a better lifestyle. I'm now a young 52-year-old excitedly embarking on a new adventure, rather than a 52-year-old warily waiting for retirement. Thanks, chaps, you're an inspiration. Well, stories like that, Neil, are an inspiration as well. And thank you to everyone who leaves a review. But also, the other way you can help the podcast is by telling people about it. So let other people know that we're here. Obviously, a lot of you are already, but it'd be great to get the word out so we can help even more people in the new year. So if you want to give us a Christmas gift, an iTunes review, and if you've already done that, well, tell a few people over Christmas about the podcast as well.
We're nearly at the end of the show, but we've just got time for Hub Extra, where we always squeeze in that little bit extra. Whether it's a resource, a quote, a recommendation, we've always got something for you, and we back it up with the Hub Extra email that goes out every Friday morning to Property Hub subscribers. This week, we've taken everything that we've talked about in this episode and put it into a handy downloadable checklist for you. Because often I think the barrier to going through a process like this isn't so much putting the time aside, it's knowing what you should be asking yourself and having an action plan. So we've made it really easy for you. All you need to do is go to thepropertyhub.net/review checklist. That's where you'll find the show notes to this episode. There you'll be able to download a PDF of the whole checklist that we've just run you through.
So go on, get some time in your calendar and work through that checklist to do your own review. And also make sure you've got in your calendar the Property Podcast for next Thursday. Because, yes, we are on episode 300. I have no idea how we've done this. We've never missed a week. But next week we will be celebrating our 300th episode. A huge milestone. But don't worry, we'll be back on Tuesday before then with Ask Rob and Rob. And if you can't wait till then and you want more Property Hub goodness in your life, then check out our social channels, which you can find on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Property Hub UK. So we'll go and get our glad rags on ready for next week. But until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.